I have had the conversation about today's session with a couple folks, and so we've framed a few questions. I'd imagine we'll get into a more organic conversation. But I want to start as a question for all of our panelists with very simply, what's the DEI vision for your direct control or direct sphere of influence? And I know that spans a couple things: procurement, HR, culture, IT, facilities, et cetera, quite a few places. And so what I'd like to ask is from a very high level, what's the vision for DEI? And I'm going to jump to Janelle out of the gate, maybe 60 seconds or so, and then we'll work down the line from there.
Sure. Can you hear me? Okay. There we go. Okay. So we got one thing right today. So first of all, I want to say thank you to NASCA. Thank you to the sponsors, and ACE, thank you for your keynote, your intro. I was diligently taking notes during the conversation. So for CMS, Central Management Services, at the highest level, for us, we oversee procurement, facilities, that includes leasing. So where people actually are situated across the state of Illinois, HR. And then we also, as part of our personnel function, also have a Bureau for Diversity and Inclusion. For us, for me, I will distill just very basically kind of our approach, which is one, of course, to be inclusive, but it's also two, to be respectful. I think one of the things you said, Ace, in the beginning of your talk was, you know, we hope that some of these conversations aren't uncomfortable. I would challenge that a bit. They are uncomfortable conversations to have because we have to challenge the systems, our personal beliefs, our practices, our policies, and that is not comfortable personally, and it's not comfortable as a system, as a bureaucracy. But for us, because we do oversee so much, because I think leadership in government is important, because we impact our constituents' lives in so many ways, whether hiring, whether it's about promotion and performance while they're actually employees, or whether it's about, you know, how we either structure our contracts, to whom we award contracts, how do we treat our vendors. For me, a lot of the work that CMS stands behind, and Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton stand behind, is respect for persons, their lived experiences, what they bring to the table. And then for us, the way that we will, I know we'll talk a little bit more about it later, how we've been thinking about how we can be better, do better, challenge ourselves, has really been around being honest around what we haven't done well, what we need to be doing better at, but also understanding the challenges that different groups of folks, individuals, actually have in accessing government, accessing hiring, accessing procurement. And so again, for us, I think as we take a step back and really respect the individual and their experience, that has been leading our conversations around what do we do, how do we serve, both large and small ways.
Great, Janelle, much appreciated, and I like the respecting individuals and the access piece. I'm going to jump to Leslie. Leslie, vision in Indiana for DEI in your agency.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry, everybody, my video isn't working today, so you just get audio. I would echo everything that Janelle just said. I think on a broad spectrum, I agree with that. In Indiana, DOA is really the only agency that has a statutory responsibility in this kind of minority women, veteran-owned business kind of area. So I feel like for our mission, one of our key responsibilities and missions is to keep the pressure on and to keep bringing it up, because it's very easy for it to slip through the cracks and for it not to be a priority. So we have to keep bringing it up and keep forcing tough conversations. I don't have the responsibility for hiring, so I don't get to kind of poke at it from that angle, but we keep the pressure on in procurement, we keep the pressure on in the certification of businesses, and so we do what we can to maintain DEI as a priority in every sphere of influence that we have. So from that angle, we do our best to be a squeaky wheel, I think is the best way put it.
Squeaky wheel. I like that. Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to jump to Jason. Jason, in Nebraska, how are you thinking about DEI and what's the vision? Where are you heading?
Thanks, Ace. Appreciate it. You know, when Governor Ricketts came into office, we lacked a mission and a vision statement for state government. So one of the first things we did is declare a vision of growing Nebraska, and through a mission of creating opportunity through efficient, effective, and customer-focused state government. And we know that we can't grow our state if we leave people behind. So I wear a couple of hats. I'm the HR officer for the state, and from that perspective, I really like Kara's formulation of saying, hey, we want a government that reflects those that we serve. As the chief administrative officer, it's about, from that customer service, customer focused perspective, how are we creating a state government that's accessible to everyone, easy to navigate, and where there's equitable benefits that accrue across the breadth of all those that we serve. So those are kind of generalities. Some very specific goals that we have that we're pretty proud of are, one, we want to be the foremost employer in the state of Nebraska for veterans. And we want to be the foremost employer in the state of Nebraska for new moms. And so those have been two areas where we've applied some very specific energy, and we very much hope to continue to kind of grow and build upon those lines of effort.
Great, Jason, thank you. I'm gonna pop over to Michelle in North Carolina. What are you doing? Where are you heading?
Sure, thank you, Ace. In North Carolina, we are working and continue to strive to be a leader to both public and private industries by modeling equity, diversity, and inclusion through the initiatives and policies that we put forth. Fortunately, we have a governor, Governor Roy Cooper, who understands that diversity drives our economy, innovation, and ideas. And he has a vision for our state, for every resident in the state to be healthier, better educated, and to have more money in their pockets so that they can live a prosperous and abundant life. Within the agency, the Department of Administration, we are responsible for government operations, as well as we have an advocacy arm, and we advocate for underserved residents across the state. And so it is more than important, I would say, that not only do we internalize the importance and the understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion as we talked about today, but it is important that we deliver those services in a way that we are not only meeting the needs of almost 11 million residents across the state on diverse and from all backgrounds, but internally, that we are creating a culture where inclusion and diversity is not only embraced, but is celebrated. So as a secretary, when I began in the Department of Administration, I identified 3 imperatives that really align with the governor's vision and align with the overall mission of the Department of Administration statutorily, as well as the efficiencies and effectiveness we want to bring about. And one of those imperatives is to create a culture of trust through enhanced employee engagement, openness, and inclusiveness. So where we are headed and what we are doing is continuing to put forth initiatives, employee resource groups, policies, and ways of connecting and working with people so that we gain a greater understanding of not only the importance of equity and inclusion for each person internally and in our communities, but what it means to our economy, what it means to our education systems, what it means to healthcare and our environmental systems, and most importantly, what it means to the lives and the hearts and souls of every North Carolinian in the state of North Carolina.
Michelle, thank you for that. That culture of trust is something I talk about in my work so often, and it's really hard to have those uncomfortable conversations, to Janelle's point, if you are not, in fact, in a trusting environment where you can hear what somebody's saying and know that they're coming from a place of intentionality, at least, and honesty to have that combo. So I want to jump to Cara and hear what you're up to in Colorado and what your vision for DEI is out west, from me at least.
Great, thank you. We are fortunate that Governor Polis's campaign slogan was a Colorado for all. And so we very easily took that and applied it in the EDI space, as well as economic opportunity, access to healthcare, and saving people money in healthcare, and opportunities around education. So we are focusing on a few areas in EDI, or not first, maybe top of mind for me right now is leadership. So last year, at the end of about 18 months ago, we did a survey. We do an employee engagement survey every 2 years, and we added a question that says, I see leadership support of equity, diversity, inclusion. And 50.7%, half of our employees felt that leaders were leading in this area. We have so much work to do. So we have convened an EDI cabinet. We are offering training to leaders. So we've developed a 4-module training for all supervisors and managers. Like many states, we are looking at how we recruit, retain, and develop employees. So but I would love to know someone who's doing this well, implementing skills-based hiring. If anyone's doing that well, please give me a shout out. We're really looking at it. It's a tough one. We have a constitutional restriction that only allows us to talk to 6 people. So Ace, your example of the resume was so critical and poignant for me as we engage in these discussions. We are also looking and re-examining recruiting strategies. How are we reaching into communities? How do we understand their life experiences and what we can bring forth? We are also doing training for all employees. So along with the mandatory compliance training that we've already done, we have a 4-module EDI training that we will be pushing out to everyone. And then we are in the middle of a disparity study for procurement. So I know a lot of you have already done this and have implemented this well, but you really can't do a lot in the procurement area without first demonstrating there's a disparity. I'm sure we're going to demonstrate a disparity. So looking forward to making real difference as we distribute the billions of dollars we spend every year, and not just thinking about, do we spend 10% on historically underutilized businesses, but how are we making sure that 10% of all professional services are going to historically underutilized businesses? How are we slicing each layer to distribute that around historically underutilized businesses rather than 10% off the top, which tends to go to those lower paying jobs and do not help change generational wealth. So really focusing on that. Those are kind of the big areas for us. And Janelle, I saw that, so I'll reach out to you.
Actually, you know, this is, I told the panelists we would throw the questions out the window probably after the first or second one. And I acknowledge that NASCA is having this organization to share resources. So I'm going to jump ahead to one of the questions, which was, how can NASCA help here? And I think connections like these. So Janelle just dropped a note to Cara's point on skills-based hiring. Janelle, can you speak briefly about what you're doing in Illinois to move that needle and maybe not just for Cara, but for the rest of the group can get some benefit there?
Sure. Sorry, I've got some Zoom issues. So just really quickly, I'm going to answer 2 questions real quick. I think NASCA being in a role to convene the conversations, to facilitate the dissemination, the sharing of ideas, of thought partnership and resources is so critical. I wish I could show you, I have sticky notes in addition to my pieces of paper here for my follow-up action items, because even though I've met with these folks before, new insight and new connection points have come up for me. So I want to encourage people who are part of NASCA. If you're not, be part of it. Use the boards. It's great. But okay, now I'm going to move back on to the question. In terms of, we call it hiring reform here in the state of Illinois. Long story short, our processes were 99% paper-based. I don't need to go into all of the biases that could be inherent in a paper-based process. We, last year, kicked off the internal process for hiring reform, where now our new positions are posted, non-union positions are posted using an online system. We're currently partnered with NeoGov in that endeavor. We're working with other partners as well. But the long story short is we literally had an opportunity to have a generational shift in how we think about hiring people. And so as we're building our online systems, we've literally taken a step back to not just think about efficiency, not just think about throwing away the paper and getting into, you know, the 21st century and using actual technology, but also to be thinking about what does real recruitment look like? You know, how do we actually understand what diversity is? How do we track it? How do we if it's important to us, right? Where are the stage gates in our processes where we stop to ask ourselves questions around why certain populations or individuals in certain populations have fallen out of our system? What does that mean around what we propose to be an unbiased system? How are we learning real time and how are we adjusting? And then again, that system learning loop. So we are by no means in a place to say that we are perfect or that we don't still have more learning to do, quite the opposite. But what I will tell you is we have been head first into this process since 2019. I think we've made a lot of great progress. And I think the learnings that we have and that we're still implementing could be helpful as cautionary tales. And I think in some cases, best practices for our partners who might be in different stages and spaces. And then conversely, what I would say is we're also happy to learn. So as we are evolving in this process, you know, another agency or another municipality on this call may say, you know, we have some really great insights around interview questions. We'd love to share that information. I think, again, for us, government, and I'll get on my soapbox one more time and just say that, you know, having worked in private sector and having worked in government, I think a lot of focus on professional development, on really helping employees become their best versions of themselves in their jobs has not been a focus of government and has not been the focus of public sector. And so now when we challenge people to be focused more on skills, not just on a job spec that's 20 years old, now that we're challenging people to work in different ways, to use different skill sets, it is harder, I think, for us to manage. And quite frankly, if you can't manage, you can't lead. And so for us, we look at our human capital management system that we're implementing in 2021/22. We look at our hiring reform process that kicked off last year and actually thinking about how we can better serve our employees from recruitment to coming in our pipeline, and so actually being employees that, you know, are happy and proud to be and fulfilled working for the state of Illinois. So again, happy to share any information that we have. My head of personnel, my head of D&I, my head of project management and data practice are also, and I think Rapid Results are also on this call. So we'll take down your information if you shout us out in the comments, but also happy to connect offline if that's helpful.
Ace?
Thank you. Thank you. I saw a couple notes flying. It seems like quite a few folks have gotten value from that. So Janelle, much appreciated. I want to switch gears a little bit. We just talked about all of the things we're doing just in such a good way. Where are we missing the mark? And I'm gonna jump to Leslie out of the gate, and we'll see who else has comments. But Leslie, you know, you're doing so much great work in Indiana. What are you missing the mark on?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a fair question. I think, well, like I mentioned earlier, you know, it's hard to be a one-stop shop where we're constantly being that squeaky wheel. I will say we have an all-agency meeting tomorrow, and one of the things we're trying to talk about is, you know, how to have those hard conversations that we've heard referenced a few times. My agency is pretty diverse. I think we talked about that in our prep call that, you know, if you looked across the census data, ours is pretty representative of what Indiana is. So it's fairly diverse. And we've talked as an executive team about how to talk about kind of what's been unfolding here in Indiana and across the country so that people know that when they come to work, it's a safe place for them. And if something happens to them that's not okay, that they can come here and talk about it, and how to bring those hard conversations up. And we haven't settled on a good way to have those conversations. And one other thing I would bring up is that I don't think there's a good answer for. We talked about in the call that kind of birthed this thought series. Janelle and I had a similar experience with our responsibility for facilities. We had some damage in the time of the more heated protests on state grounds. and we spent some time and some money cleaning them up. And then we had floated the notion of, is it the right thing to do to clean it up? Should we leave it? I mean, are we aggravating some social heat by cleaning it up? And should we leave it? And that's a conversation that I think maybe things have obviously certainly calmed down here. And I don't think there's a good answer for that. And I think Janelle had a similar experience. So I don't know that any of that is bad, but I think some of that is maybe unresolved.
Unresolved and perhaps a bit uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
I hear that, especially as someone, so I'm based in Richmond, Virginia, former capital of the Confederacy with, I think, the leading tally on second place trophies still standing in our city. So, you know, I can get the dilemma between cleaning things up after they've been vandalized or leaving the context, perhaps, from the other side of the conversation. So I want to transition a little bit before we get into breakout rooms, because we've got some incredible breakout rooms and a rapid talk from Deloitte coming up. As we wind down with the panelists, I want to throw out a rapid prompt. So I've got a couple here, but I'll pick the one that I liked the most. The best value your agencies have offered towards DEI has been fill in the blank. And I'd like to start with Jason for that one. The best value that your agency has offered toward DEI has been fill in the blank. Jason, thought?
I'm going to give a tactical answer to what probably is more deserving of a loftier concept given the conversation here, but I'll say data. And that would be my answer to also what our biggest opportunity is. You know, in ACE, I think it related very closely to your keynote as well. When we have data, then we can identify opportunities. We can identify problems, we can form hypotheses, and we can test solutions. In the absence of data, it's tough to know we have a problem, and oftentimes I think many of us have blind spots for what the issues are. So I'll use one example in Nebraska. Law enforcement nationally is about 13% female. In our state law enforcement agency, our state trooper organization, we're at 6% female. So we could, you know, there's probably a conversation to have about whether or not 13% is the right number, probably not, but certainly 6% isn't given that benchmark. And so with that data in hand, we can look at, okay, are we systemically creating barriers in terms of our hiring process to matriculate women into our organization, or are we creating barriers in the organization itself that bars women from being successful? So that's an example of where I think our agency and administrative services and state personnel can aid decision makers in terms of driving the right conversations and testing solutions to help make sure that, you know, like I talked about at the jump, that we're creating great customer experiences for those that we're serving, and also creating a workforce that everybody feels they can enjoy that spirit of inclusivity and team.
Awesome, thank you. I want to jump to Michelle on the same thing. Best value your agency is offering on the DEI front is fill in the blank.
I'd say the best value that the Department of Administration in North Carolina is offering to D&I is courageous leadership. We push the boundaries and we work fearlessly for those who are underserved across the state, as well as all of our other residents. But through our work, there have been results and deliverables that have had a meaningful impact internally, as well as with the residents. For example, with the governor's leadership and with our work, he has created and implemented executive orders that promote health and wellness and protections for pregnant employees. He's also created recently 2 task force, one on social, environmental, and societal inequities, another on the racial injustice and inequity in the state criminal system. There have been changes to our hiring practices. For example, on applications, you no longer have to list your salary history, because we know based on data, as well as I know firsthand as a female, that many times the salary is based on what you write on the paper, which puts many females at an even larger gap in salary and because of the gender wage gap with men. Our Council for Women provides research and data and reports that not only support the measures that we push for and that we implement, but they have been courageous in voicing and sharing the information across the state, bringing awareness to it. Within the Department of Administration, our historically underutilized business program, I would say, is not only an advocate for small minority women business and small businesses, but is an advocate for building capacity and capabilities within North Carolina that will have a great return on our economy, which we all want a thriving economy. So those are a few actions that the department has either contributed to, initiated, or led. And of course, the return on the investment of time, heart, leadership, and hard work is going to result in a benefit to our economy, a benefit to every resident in the state through that economic improvement, and also to our state employees. So I would say that the Department of Administration in North Carolina is fortunate to have a leadership team that consistently amplifies and exemplifies courageous behaviors and ones that really speak for the voices of many who think they are voiceless or their voices aren't heard. We love doing that, we enjoy doing that, and then we have the great benefit and honor of keeping government on its tracks and running at the same time. So the diversity in the agency itself gives us a real joy and thrill for the state of North Carolina.
Great, thank you so much, Michelle. Time, heart, leadership, and hard work. I loved part of your closing right there.